So, Kara came out with another video proving NGS is a super game. I didn't think this was a question, to be honest. Now, my understanding of what Sega uses for the title super game has nothing to do with the game being absolutely amazing or anything along those lines. It has everything to do with the game being a live service game, which PSO2 is, to my understanding. Unless there's some sort of knowledge I'm missing in this situation. I don't know. We'll have to see. That's a yikes. I don't know what happened in this video, but not everyone is happy with this one. We're going to save our reservations for the end of the video, as we always do. And yeah, we'll go ahead and comment on it. If you guys don't know who this is, well, you should probably pay attention. It's probably one of NGS's biggest creators. And yeah. Community being the community, man. Nope. Reserve reservations. Reserve reservations. All right, let's see where the rabbit hole took this video. I'm curious. Where did this go?
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to be proving to you guys that NGS is indeed a super game by giving you a little bit more insider information. Well, I mean, it's not really inside information. You could just Google it, but everyone wants to jump on the hate bandwagon and just shit on my video about the budget increase. And so we're going to be addressing that in today's video.
Might not have started out the best, but he is not incorrect. It's definitely not wrong. I saw a couple of those comments pop in my video, and I'm just like, this isn't even a discussion. It's literally the definition of what they use. And then, much like mentioned, I just did a simple Google.
But before we jump into all of that, if you're new to the channel, I upload NGS content daily. So if you do play this game, I would really appreciate a subscribe, as it really helps out the channel. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin the video. So as I said in the introduction, we will be addressing the video that I made. NGS got a huge budget increase, as you get.
That's not looking the best, and based on what I've seen, oh, did it just? I was like, did it just break all of a sudden? And based on what I've seen, it didn't get much better, unfortunately. But you know, it is what it is.
You can see right here, it does have a 76.9% like ratio with 333 likes and 100 dislikes. Now, a lot of people seem to just jump on the bandwagon because they saw the comment section and they saw the most thumbed up one, and they were like, oh, that's what the video is about, and they just kind of glossed over the rest. However, I'm going to be addressing the comment section when we head over to the comment section over here, and we're going to sort it through top comments right here. So, you know, the first one over here doesn't mean anything. It's just like, oh, I read the comments before watching the video. So, fatal dose of copium. However,
this literal worst kind of comment, by the way, worst type of chatter. Glad I read the comments before watching the video. I could have taken a damn near fatal dose of hopium, or you could have just watched the video and developed your own. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. No judgment. All right, no judgment. The like-dislike button was important for people to figure out whether like things were good or bad. This was just a case of an opinion that not everyone agreed with. And to be fair, in my video, I also didn't agree with it. I simply stated it differently and why it was important and why. And even then, it's funny. The funny part was, even in my comment section, people still had this crazy mindset, right? Insane mindset. I even mentioned during, I was like, hey, you know, I don't think NGS is really getting, you know, that exact budget, but the fact that it's going towards super games, which NGS is, it's a live service game, the fact that they're going to put it towards super games is really big. It then teaches Sega that, hey, this might also be useful outside of PSO2, so you should dedicate more money towards this in general, which would inflate that side of the actual company, which would also help PSO2 in the long run. It would still be a benefit all around. Something I mentioned from the very beginning, but you know, even though we talked about it in those videos, in that video at that time, it wasn't something everyone paid attention to. But it is what it is. Let's keep going.
dose of copium. However, there were some constructive criticisms over here. For example, Prince Brightstar over here does say that, Carol, it says right on the page, the money isn't for NGS, it's for legacy IPs and the super game. Legacy IPs was announced last year: Shinobi, Golden Axe, Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, and Streets of Rage, and NGS has never been defined as a super game. So this is where a lot of miscommunication comes in, or a lot of misunderstandings. Because when I was talking over that the financial statement sheet, yes, they did not define NGS at all. They didn't address NGS or PSO2 anywhere. And this is where a lot of people jump the gun and they're like, oh my god, Carol, you're smoking so much copium. It doesn't say that. You know, you're clearly just spreading misinformation. However, if you dig in a little bit deeper and you actually look at the different divisions, how Sega is broken up in their gaming division, there is a total of 4 different gaming divisions. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The division which is in charge of the super games is the 3rd division. And in today's video, we will be going through this entire article. But before that, I still want to continue to address a couple.
To clarify, by the way, this happens very, very commonly during translation situations. Super game does not refer to one game. It doesn't refer to a single game. It is a case of games. It is a group of games. It is a type of games. Not one game. Type of game. Not one game. Type of games. That's the difference here.
Couple more comments. As you can see right here, they all talk about super game. It's not talking about the super game. As you can see right here, LOL thinking NGS is the super game. The copium is so real. There's a lot of comments over here saying that, hey, NGS is not a super game, and that's the main issue that a lot of people have. It's not the budget increase or not increase or whatever. It's just saying that NGS is not a super game. They're not.
To clarify, again, I don't think that the entire budget's for NGS. I think that is some hopium. That is fair hopium to have, but hopium's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Hopium is not a bad thing.
Getting that money. And with all of that out of the way, now it is time to jump into the meat and potatoes of this article so that you guys can understand why I say NGS is a super game. So for those who are interested, I will leave this link in the description below so that you can read it for yourself and see what all the other divisions do. But today we will be focusing on the 3rd development division because this is the one that is in charge of the super game. So as we can see, people who are in this division, the senior executive manager is Yuya Kimura. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Yuya Kimura is in charge of PSO2 New Genesis. A lot of people are like, oh my god, it doesn't write it in the article. I'll read it out for you right here. Joined in 2004, senior executive manager of the 3rd development division. Entered the company as a part-time planning assistant for Sonic Team, gained experience in managing the operations of Sega's online R&D department for Phantasy Star Online 2, and now serves as the series producer of PSO2 New Genesis.
Now, it says he's a senior executive manager and the series producer. Doesn't necessarily mean anything, but we'll keep going.
Now, the vice executive manager is Kazuma Yoshida, joined in 2011, vice executive manager of the 3rd division, entered Sega's network management department as a mid-career hire, transferred to Sega Networks, currently serves as the producer of MJ Mobile. Then we have the manager, Shinya Matsunami, joined in 2024, manager of the 3rd development division, 3rd online R&D department number 1. Developed action games as part of Sonic Team before moving over to PSO as a technical director, managing all the programming / engineering team and oversees all technical matters. Okay, so in fairness, 2 out of 3 of the major leads of the department that are in charge of that, I'm going to say in quotations, super game, right? Because we haven't figured out the exact, we're not there yet. But 2 of the 3 work on PSO2. That's a fact. That is simply a fact we're reading. Carry on. Now, this is the part where everyone is just gonna have to accept, all right? At the forefront of developing blockbuster super games, Sega's latest endeavor involves creating super games online based on AAA titles on a global scale. So, what is a super game? It requires 4 of these points in order to categorize as a super game. All right, the first one is a multi-platform release. NGS.
PC. Well, let's go over all of it. Xbox, Microsoft Store, Steam, Epic Games Store, and PlayStation. In Japan, Switch. Okay, you got one. Go ahead.
Has that. It's available on Steam, on Epic Games Store, on the Microsoft Store, on the Xbox, on the PlayStation. It's available on multiple platforms. So a multi-platform release, check.
That's one for the Marcus. One for your homie, dude.
Global server. It has a Japanese server. Check. A simultaneous worldwide launch. NGS was a game that launched both in Japan and on global.
That is true. That's a very big part for them. Simultaneous world launch.
Part of other AAA titles. Yes, some people might argue here, NGS is not a AAA title. Well, in Sega's eyes, it is a AAA title, and so.
Reminder, in Japan, they treat this game very differently. Very, very differently. The Japanese community does push this as a AAA title. Regardless of what people may think about it, that is how they look at this.
There you go. All right. NGS has hit all 4 of these points, and thus it does count as a super game. And if you still don't believe me for whatever reason, literally the senior executive manager for the super games is Yuya Kimura.
He makes a valid point. I'm not saying that they specifically were referring super games when they talked about it in their budget report. I'm just saying by their own definition of a super game, NGS fits all of those bills. And 2 out of 3 of the member profiles they show are people that work on NGS. I don't really see where the argument is here.
All right. It's the person in charge of PSO2 New Genesis. So I'm going to stop regurgitating this, and we're just going to read the article, and I'm going to try to stay as calm as possible and just be a little bit more objective. But moving on.
He's
With
mad.
their wealth and experience developing and managing multi-platform titles, the third development division is currently spearheading the development of super games.
Hey, they said it. Super games, not super game. Not one, not a single title. A group. Titles. More than one. Yes. Games. All right, I'm gonna stop memeing. I'm sorry, guys.
Today, we are joined by Senior Executive Manager Yuya Kimura, Vice Executive Manager Kazuma Yoshida, and Manager Shinya Matsunami to discuss the distinct qualities of their division and the type of individual that would thrive in it. If you're interested in the gaming industry, please give this interview a read. First, could you please tell us about your background? And Kimura says, I joined Sega as a part-timer, spent time as a contract worker, and then transitioned to a full-time employee. Initially, I had no prior experience in the gaming industry. I honed my game development skills while working as a planning assistant here.
I love how Carol reads the same way that I do, which is like highlighting stuff that he's actually reading over. I do it instinctively. I don't do it on purpose.
At the time, I was in charge of creating the expansion quest as part of the Phantasy Star Online operations team. I've worked on the PSO series for over 20 years, and I'm now the series producer for PSO2 New Genesis. Since becoming the senior executive manager of the third development division, my duties extended beyond simply making games. I'm responsible for monitoring our business activities as a whole. Do part-time employees often advance to managerial positions? Sega is a meritocracy in the best sense. If you put in the effort and make the most of every opportunity, starting in the part-time position doesn't limit your potential for advancement. We may be a big company, but we don't have the traditional Japanese career path for new graduates. Over half of the management level employees in the third development division join us as part-timers or mid-career hires.
That's actually really cool.
Anyone who joins us in the future will be able to adequately advance their career if they apply themselves diligently. Then we've got some questions for Yoshida-san over here. Could you tell us about your background as well? After graduating university, I worked 6 years working in management at a Japanese car dealership. Afterwards, my love for online games compelled me to join the gaming company, where I remained for 6 years. It was around that time when Sega began recruiting for PSO2. I joined Sega's team as a team manager for their GMs, or their game masters.
Yeah, this is like the best advertisement to, hey, go work for Sega.
Sega eventually transferred me to Sega Networks, which was primarily focused on developing mobile games. After working there for a while, I returned to Sega, where I currently serve as the Vice Executive Manager for the 3rd Development Division, the manager of our mobile game development team, and the producer of MJ Online. And then they continue with the same question, but for Matsunami over here. After graduating university, I wanted to make online games, so I joined Sega. I started off with the Sonic team working on action games and eventually switched over to PSO. My main duties upon joining Sega were engineering tasks, and now part of the 3rd Development Division, I manage our engineers and oversee all tech matters as a technical director. Then we're gonna see right here the 3rd Development Division mission to deliver a blockbuster game with simultaneous global launch. What kind of department is the 3rd Development Division? The 3rd Development Division produces games using a GAAS. Someone in the comment section of that video that I showed you guys was talking about this, and they're like, oh, it doesn't just talk about that. But as we can see here, the 3rd Development Division is actually in charge of this. GAAS actually stands for Games as a Service Model. So as you can see, this is a business model, right? Conceptually,
is there anyone currently in the chat that disagrees with the mindset that PSO2 is a live service game, not a super game? I know people have different thought process. I'm just curious. Does anyone think PSO is not a live service game? I need to know. I'm very, very curious. We're gonna give it a moment for the delay, boys. PSO is not a live service game. It's a game with weekly updates. You know what, man? The second thing you said, I can't argue with that. That is very true. Not even weekly anymore, though. Sometimes bi-weekly. Sometimes no weekly updates anymore. I think people really just don't understand what the term super game actually means. I think that people are like, oh, it must mean that they defined what a super game was. I don't know how we can even have this conversation, but let's continue.
This means that the game operates as a service. We generate revenue by updating the game on a daily basis as opposed to a number of units sold.
I don't even know how that could be an argument.
So, a live service game. Furthermore, we also provide
games the game that gets bi-weekly updates.
Our division is unique in that it offers a wide range of career experience as we work on console, PC, arcade games, as well as mobile. We also manage a number of our...
They work on mobile? PSO2 ES or PSO2 NGS ES confirmed? NGS confirmed. NGS ES confirmed.
Our own titles globally, PSO2. Our division has a broader range of tasks.
You're asking for people to be mad at you, Kara. Stop it.
Sega. Due to our work with other regions and platforms, we're one of the few workplaces in Japan that has an infrastructure to develop and run our own cross-platform online game. Lastly, one huge aspect of our division is our work on super games, which is a whole new frontier for us. Now, here comes the...
Okay, that kind of goes against them because PSO2 is not... You know what? No, when you think about it, technically PSO2 did shift. Or Phantasy Stars did shift, right? Like, Phantasy Star games originally, right? Because I mentioned this a while back. Phantasy Star games follow the online model that is the most popular at that time. Originally, if we're talking way back, right, in the Dreamcast era and the GameCube era, all that stuff, Phantasy Star Online was a game that you bought for like the single player experience or whatever. You played online and stuff like that too, but you bought it for like the regular storyline and stuff like that. And then you had to buy other versions and episodes of the game itself afterwards. It was based on units sold. It wasn't until PSU, well, no, they even released Ambitions of the Illuminous as like a separate game too. Like you had to buy the expansion separately. You could buy it as a DLC, like a download version, but there was actually a physical disc for it too. I don't think it wasn't until actually PSO2 that like it legitimately got an update like that where it was just online. Even you could argue that the mobile versions or the handheld versions, PSO2 or Phantasy Star Universe, Phantasy Star Portable and Portable to Infinity, those two, you could argue that those were also like the first delve into their proper online service game, but those were sold as like a complete unit with added on stuff afterwards. So interesting to see. Will they ever remake PSO? I'm curious, do people really want old PSO back, or do they want remade PSO with current graphics, like actual current combat? Because like I don't think people actually want to play the original PSO combat. Like I've gone back and played it. It's not great. Like it is a product of its time. It was awesome at the time, yeah. But like it's literally just walk and shoot or walk and swing, and you just deal with getting knocked down over and over again. It's really not good. Like other than just like the environments, the storyline around them, and then like some of the systems, like I don't think people want PSO. I think they want an excuse not to play NGS, and it's fine. But like every Phantasy Star game, just wait till the next one if there's gonna be a next one, right? Like people that liked PSO originally, a lot of times people didn't like PSU. A lot of people that liked PSU didn't like PSO2. A lot of my friends that I played PSU with, a ton of them, hated base PSO2 when it came out, man. They did not like it at all. It was a completely different game to them. They liked PSU, or they liked PSP and PSP2i, but they did not like PSO2. Like I legit tried to get my friends that I played PSU with into PSO2. They all quit. During Global, by the way, during when it was at its best, they all quit. So like, I don't think people realize what they're asking for at the time. Like a lot of people really need to go back and play PSO, man. I know people want a new Phantasy Star game, and that's fine. Every time we get a new generation of Phantasy Star, people want a new Phantasy Star game. Like it happens every single time. They're like, oh, just give up on this one. Let's move on to the next one. Give up on this one. Let's move on to the next one. Give up on this one. Let's move on to the next one. I'm like, but it starts the cycle over again. It never is perfect. PSU was ass online until Ambitions of the Illuminus. Until Ambitions of the Illuminus came out, there were so many things wrong with PSU. It's not even funny. Like it was terrible. The only ones that were really good was probably Portable 2 Infinity, or Portable 2 and Portable 2 Infinity. Those two were like the additions on a Portable that Portable needed at the time. Like they were amazing. It's insane to think how much of a step back the release of PSO2 felt compared to Portable 2 Infinity. You guys have to remember how different those games actually were. We were dealing with a very similar situation that we had beforehand. Portable 2 Infinity had full-on like characters. It had full-on very developed characters, had full-on kits. You had the different types of races. Doomins were a completely different beast. Infinity Blasts were insane. Beasts had a completely different Nano Blast. Like all these things happened. And then base PSO2, where there were just like a few Photon Blasts, 3 characters. Like the class system comparatively to PSU going into PSO2 feels very different for a lot of players. A lot of players. They look at PSO2's class system comparatively to what PSU was, and they think it's a substantial downgrade. Substantial. So like, I don't know if that's something that people really want, or if they realize what it is they're actually asking for. I'm gonna say go back and play PSO, man. Go back and play PSO. I think it'd be cool to have it as a remake. I don't think it's gonna be as popular. No, that's not true. It's going to be extraordinarily popular for the first second it comes out. A lot of people will go into it, they'll have a lot of fun, but I don't think anyone is gonna stick with it the way they think they are. I think it'll be an awesome thing for the guys who were playing the private servers and stuff back in the day, assuming it wasn't, you know, it isn't changed or anything like that.
Big question. Can you explain what super games are? Even though we had the answer above, here is the answer from Yoshida.
This is why they're mad. I get it.
AAA titles with a worldwide release date. We currently have a number of titles in development, games that are typically launched in Japan first. The successful titles would then be localized and released overseas. Super games, on the other hand, are developed with a global release in mind, which makes it easier to build communities around them. So
technically, that was supposed to be base PSO2. By the way, fun fact, most people don't realize it, but base PSO2 was slated to release alongside the JP release way back, and they never got a company that would pick it up. A lot of people don't realize this, and a lot of people forget this conversation. They even forget the actual website existed originally. The base PSO2 was supposed to release around the world, and it didn't. Never got a company to pick it up, and then they tried to release it later. They were like, oh, we'll release it later. Never happened until way down the line. Sega finally got Xbox to pick it up. That way they could make NGS a worldwide release.
Games that were released in Japan first and then got a global release afterwards do not count as super games. I believe this is where the majority of the misunderstanding comes in. People are like, oh my gosh, PSO2 had a JP release and the global release was 10 years later. So a lot of people think that PSO2 is not a super game. And technically, you guys are correct there. However, NGS is a super game. So hopefully now you guys see why there's some confusion, because NGS literally has PSO2 colon NGS versus just regular PSO2. And this is where I think a lot of the misunderstandings coming in, because PSO2 or the base game is not considered a super game. However, NGS is considered a super game. All right, is there really that much of a difference between launching the game globally from the outset comparing to localizing an already successful Japanese game? Yes, games that are released for the Japanese market tend to cater too much to Japanese audiences. In that respect, it's hard to produce a true global hit. In contrast, a game that is envisioned for a global audience from the get-go requires much more intricate development process. For instance, gacha, a common feature found in a lot of Japanese games, has been outlawed in many parts of the world. It's not just the laws either. We have to consider cultural norms, fads, ethics, and regional preferences as well. Creating a globally acclaimed game is significantly more challenging than designing one solely for the Japanese market. Having that said, having a conservative and risk-averse approach won't result in a fun game. Sometimes we have to push the boundaries in order to create something new and innovative. These difficulties are a one-of-a-kind challenge that only motivates us further.
This is why, this is the, what's the word I'm looking for? This is the, how can I put this? The, not silver lining, but kind of like the gray area that's used a lot of times for these games that exist when they're in Japan first and then they're localized here. They don't have to follow that many of the rules behind most places, right? And you can pick where they're localized too. You can't stop people from getting things in certain areas, in certain places. If something's outlawed somewhere, right, like you're not supposed to be able to play it, but you still get a hold of it, it's not the company selling it to you, it's you getting a hold of it. So they're able to get away with some other things. This is why there are some situations or some things that they have not brought back from PSO2. Some things just aren't in the game. This is why I fully believe, they won't say it, and I'm sure they're never going to say it, this is why I fully believe we will never have another casino. We won't. We legitimately will never have another casino. It won't be something that happens, because technically gambling laws are very, very different in different parts of the world. It is very illegal and can be seen as selling gambling to children or glorifying gambling, which is something that will never, it shouldn't happen. That's not something you should ever do, but it's something that will likely never happen again. This is why we don't see it. This is why the response to it was, it's still in PSO2. Like that's the thing, is the response to it is, hey, it's still in PSO2 because, hey, that's the only place it can be. Technically, it should be gone for some places based on laws, but that's besides the point. We're not arguing the ethics of if it's right or wrong. I'm just letting you guys know this is why this happens and why we likely won't see it again.
So hopefully this clarifies.
And also, PSU's casino was better. Fight me, chat. I'll do it. I said it.
Things a little bit better so that people understand, what does Sega actually mean when they say a super game? All right, here you go, black and white, everything is stated pretty clearly, and I hope now you guys understand. But we are not even halfway through the article yet, so again, we're going to continuing to challenge themselves as professionals in the third development division. Could you tell us about the team structure of the third development division? We have over 600 staff members. All right, guys, remember, I've been telling you guys, PSO2, small team, because they couldn't, that's why development for the game was so slow. That's why content was coming out very, very slow. 600 members now in the third development division.
To be fair, allocation's a thing. 600 staff members, and 3 of them work on PSO2 NGS. I'm being an asshole. I'm just kidding. We don't know how the allocation goes as far as that is. I'm not going to make a comment on whether or not those are, separated evenly or anything along those lines. I'm just going to continue to say that the popularity of PSO2 is very different in the West versus in the East. That's all I'm going to say.
Keep in mind, though, that out of the 600 members, not all 600 is working on NGS. there's a lot of these people who are making new games. You know, they're developing new super games. There's been a lot of talk about the new Crazy Taxi coming out in 2027. So, you know, maybe a lot of those people are working on those games. But nevertheless, in this division, they have over 600 members. So this is a huge step up from what they had before, and hopefully, you know, they're able to allocate more people into NGS since they got the budget increase. Again, we're just going to continue on. Many of whom possess a broad spectrum of skills, our division has received a significant influx of staff from other departments in order to facilitate development for the super games, resulting in a particularly diverse workforce.
Okay, so it's very important to clarify this. A significant influx of staff from other departments in order to facilitate development for super games. Not the super game, not the super games. For super games, plural, multiple different titles. They defined what super games were earlier. Now, this would be better if Sega just told us, hey, here's all of our super games. But they didn't, unfortunately.
If there's something that we don't understand about certain
not even 18 plus rating will be enough for a casino anymore. No,
usually consult
it's literally illegal in some countries
and resolve it right away. In addition, most of our managers are very hands-on and more than happy to lend a helping hand. This is actually super important. The managers in this division are actually willing to step down and help people in order to solve the problem.
Oh god, we're only 15 minutes in, chat, and this recording is like 40 minutes long. I'm so sorry, Cry. I'm so sorry.
Sense of marketing. To continuously operate a live service game, you need to know the market inside out. That's why we search for game producers who have a good aptitude for marketing. I believe that our division is especially passionate about game development. Once every 6 months, we hold a kind of fantasy league for project proposals, where everyone pitches in their own ideas. It helps us so that team members who dream of creating their own IP one day, our division is committed to accommodating our staff and assisting them in bringing their ideas to life. This is where Line Strike came to be. As much as I personally do not like Line Strike, but I know there are a handful of players who really like Line Strike. And, you know, Line Strike would never be...
That's taken a bit of a liberty based on the story, but I can see how that would be the case. I don't know if that would be the case for sure, but we do know from the development team that Line Strike was something that was worked secondarily. It was something that they had to run a contest basically to see what would win. So it does kind of line up with this conversation that they're having at the moment. So I could see that being the case. What is starting to sound like in a lot of, and I mean, this is actually not a bad thing. If this is the case right now, we don't know this is the case. We don't know this isn't the case. It just depends on how these teams work. Because I've actually learned that these teams vary wildly between companies is what I have learned. Having friends who work not only, I'll say Blizzard, just because that's the funny one to say. You got to see the keywords there. Blizzard, yeah. Friends that worked at Blizzard, but friends that have worked in other gaming companies as well. God, what is the other one? Riot Games. I've had family that's worked for Ubisoft as well as CD Projekt Red and a couple other places. But what I've learned from listening to stories from all these different places is game development companies are wildly different from being very specific to only staying within their own niche and no one else working on projects to one giant conglomerate of like groups of people working on multiple games all together simultaneously. So this could be that situation. That could be the case for Sega, where their entire division kind of works together across everything. Which some people could see as too many hands in the pot, so to speak. But that's not to say necessarily that this is what they are doing. But if it was, that's kind of cool.
Become a thing if they didn't actually hold this 6-month tournament thing within their company. So this is pretty nice that, hey, you know, they're actually letting the staff do whatever the heck they want in order to produce more content and new stuff. Yes, it is a little bit annoying in the sense that, hey, you know, they could be spending that time in making actual content for the game, like in PSO2.
Yeah, give us more content. But, if we just simply had another piece of content, the game would be fixed.
And we're
it would be
just
saved.
the information here, and we just kind of have to accept it. Now moving on, as you take on new challenges, Are there any changes you've noticed? When we started working from home, one of our third-year staff members suggested that we create a virtual office, which we've been testing with some of our team members. We don't disregard good ideas due to tenure or experience. We'd like to be an organization that isn't bound to stuffy conventions. Some of our gas titles have been in service for over a decade, but that doesn't mean that we're not constantly adding new features or trying new things with them. The reason our titles continue to endure is that we never stop seeking innovation. It is a sign that our workplace enables us to thrive and push boundaries, welcoming curiosity-driven team members willing to dive into many fields. What type of qualities does the third development division look for? I'd say someone who can think from a consumer's and marketer's point of view. To harken back to what Kimura said, a marketing mindset is a must when making a live service game. New trends come and go in a blink of an eye. We have no way of predicting what the next big thing is, yet we're trying to put out games that will remain popular for the next 5 to 10 years. To achieve that, we know that we can't just chase trends when we develop games. We also need to read between the lines and understand what our audience truly wants. It's not an issue for producers, developers have to consider it too. I hope to find developers who can think of creative ways to enhance the gameplay experience rather than just simply follow instructions. People who have prior experience working in mobile or online games will already possess this mindset to some degree. For some individuals, what would be the allure of working at Sega? Part of our appeal is the ample opportunities you'll get to challenge yourself. As a large company, you might think that means things take a long time to get done at Sega, but that's actually not the case. Colleagues who've made the switch from smaller companies have found that they're able to execute ideas at a similar pace. Furthermore, Sega's extensive resources will help expedite your idea, resulting in a faster implementation phase compared to a small or medium-sized company. We have the know-how for overseas expansion and the right network of contacts, so we should be able to get the ball rolling for any idea that you might have. As an engineer, what qualities are you looking for in a candidate? Someone who has a thirst of knowledge and eager to learn. At Sega, we have the most skilled people out there, as well as a wide assortment of projects to work on. As such, I can't think of a better place to learn. This is also why I don't want any of my teammates to feel pressured at work. We try to provide a logical and reasonable time frame for you all to get your work done. In addition, it's an ideal place for engineers who appreciate good communication. We value team-based development. Individuals who prefer collaborating with those around them over staying in their own bubble will be able to thrive in our workplace. What about you, Kimura? I'd like to work with someone who has a strong vision of their career path. I'm talking about the kinds of people who have a clear goal in sight and will put in the effort to achieve it. Of course, these things take time. We'll assign a role where they can make the most out of their prior work experience and work with them to create a roadmap that will help them gain the experience they need to achieve their future goals. The senior employees would like each staff member to feel comfortable at work and as such are willing to accommodate their needs as best as possible. I understand that very few individuals in the gaming industry in their 20s or 30s will have worked outside the realm of mobile games. However, for anyone who wants to develop other platforms or is simply seeking a new challenge, I encourage them to apply to us. I understand Sega is pivoting to a global direction, but will English be required at your work? No, English is not essential. However, at Sega, we do have a system that allows staff to take an English lessons free of charge. It's also a great environment for those who want to learn English. Of course, even if you don't speak any English at all, we do have interpreters on hand that can help you if you want to get involved in global projects. Being able to speak English will open up more avenues, but please don't worry if you don't, because you'll still be able to thrive at Sega.
It's okay, Sega. Even those of us who live in America, we can't speak English.
Lastly, is there anything else you'd like to say to anyone interested in potentially working at Sega? At Sega, especially at the third development division, there are plenty of chances for you to push yourself and take on new challenges. We even offer the flexibility to switch projects midway, allowing you to shape your career path as you desire. Only the third development division offers the chance to work
Getting
on
that JP work
arcade
viz. Let's
and
go.
PC games. A big advantage of working with us is that you won't need to change jobs in order to gain a variety of experience. Not many companies out there will be able to offer you this kind of dynamic work environment. I highly encourage inquisitively minded people to come speak with us. We have numerous large-scale projects that require hundreds of staff members, including our super games. I can't think of any other company in Japan that would provide the same opportunity of working on games of such magnitude. Furthermore, one of Sega's strong points is its career opportunities. If you have the drive and the skills, it's a fantastic place to develop your abilities and build a successful career. Despite the large number of employees at Sega, there are still plenty of great positions available. As long as you're able to deliver results, you'll find yourself generously rewarded. We value ability and accomplishment over tenure, so you'll be evaluated based on what you bring to the table. I urge that you consider applying if you'd like to be part of a large-scale project. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the full article over here on the third division. And it clears up a lot of misunderstandings, and hopefully this clears things up for you guys so that you guys understand why I even made this video about the 30 million yen budget increase, because
which we are still on the side of. It's a little bit of hopium. All right, it's a lot of hopium actually, but it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Okay, we'll remain objective. Wait till the end of the video.
It's all going into the third development division team right here, which just so happens to include PSO2 NGS.
Special thanks to all the members for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me. Thank you again.
But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover in today's video. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. If you did, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye.
All right, let me give it a like. This was nothing but straight facts. Like there are some, what's what I'm looking for? Some liberties taken based on the information provided, but nothing here is malicious or just outright incorrect. I think people are going way too fucking far, way too far into the whole mindset of like, this is not even close to what it is. By development or by their own definition of what a super game is, PSO2 is a super game. It's that simple. Like, I don't see a situation where this is not everything that Phantasy Star currently is. It is not everything Phantasy Star has been. It is not everything that Phantasy Star has always been, but NGS is literally exactly these things, the way that it actually is set up. It is a multi-platform release. It is multilingual, supported worldwide. It did have a simultaneous world launch. It is on scale and par with other AAA titles, at the very least in Japan. At the very least. That's at minimum. Now, granted, what defines a AAA title by current standards in today's day and age can be left up to interpretation. That can be left up to interpretation. I've played a lot of AAA games that have basically seemed like indie games. I played a lot of indie games that have basically seemed like AAA games. So we'll have to see. Now, keep in mind, right? Keep in mind, what he just reviewed was simply to explain that NGS is a super game. That was the entire point of this video. The entire point of the video was not to say NGS was a super game, meaning that it's getting all of this budget. The entire point wasn't to say that, oh, NGS deserves this budget and it's getting a bunch of new developers because it's a super game. The whole point of this video was to say, hey guys, this is what a super game is. This is what we're actually using. This is what they're talking about when they refer super game. That's why it's a good thing for NGS. That's why I had the take that I did. While PSO2 was not, by Sega's own definition, NGS is a super game. And if this department is in charge of super games, plural, not only recently, not recently added, not just the new super games that are coming, then yes, investing in this department does help NGS overall. Whether or not may not be directly, it is still going to help the development overall. Whether it is pointing Sega in the right direction for the game that they're developing, whether it is even providing any form of budget in the first place, which I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think Sega is going to get any more budget for NGS specifically, because I don't think Sega's NGS is like the only thing those development, like those actual like departments develop in the first place. Like, that's just not a thing that happens. Like, does it come off as wrong? Yes, it comes off as extraordinarily hopeful. This video comes off as super freaking hopeful. Yeah. Karo's also a extraordinarily positive individual. Very, very positive dude, right? Like, he's an extraordinarily positive individual, like very, very positive individual. If anyone's going to see it as a bit of hopium, I would expect it to be Karo. Yes, absolutely. That's pretty normal or whatever. But like, factually incorrect, sure, that's fine. But deceitful in nature, like, that's just ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. And to be perfectly honest, it's kind of even sillier. Like, I don't take a lot of YouTube comments or these things really all that seriously. Yeah, it's going to ruin someone's day, absolutely. But to be perfectly honest, Those of you guys out there who are just like, oh man, I don't dislike this guy. I don't like this guy. I'm gonna thumbs down. You're only helping. Hitting either one of these buttons, by the way, like literally either button, is positive. The only thing this does is I want to help and make him feel bad, or I want to help and make him feel good. That's what these two buttons do. Once you've watched the video, like actually, legitimately, the only thing that people like, the people who did anything at all that were like actually negative in this manner were the people that scrolled to the comments, read the comments, and then clicked off the video because of it. They're the only ones who had any form of negative impact on the video whatsoever. All of this simply pushes us forward. Ultimately, do I believe that Sega or that NGS is a super game? By Sega's own definition, yes, NGS is a super game. Unless Sega quite literally comes out and says, these are our super game titles and NGS is not one of them. By the definitions that they provide us, NGS is a super game. Do I believe that the 30 billion yen that they're investing into this department specifically? I don't think it's the super game is in question. I'm gonna start highlighting things for you. I'm gonna start highlighting things for you, and I want you to understand.
Good morning.
Because right now we're casual. We're casual YouTube comment. We're casual YouTube comment right now. But I don't think it's a super game in question. They never specifically defined that it would be one super game versus another. They defined that it was going towards the department that was working on super games. That doesn't matter. They didn't define specifically what title it goes towards. It says they're working on a super game itself, yes. But they also defined that the entire department works on the games mostly together, from what I understand. So even if, let's say, for example, you're right, it's not the super game that it's going towards. It's going towards a different super game. It's going towards like another. It's still going towards those developers, that entire department. The bottom line is that NGS is a super game. Do I think NGS got this? No. I don't think it got this budget increase in the slightest. If I'm giving you guys what I think of the matter, here's my entire breakdown. The third division covers all super games. Straight up. That's what it is. The third division covers super games in general. Sega is investing in the division that's working on super games. That's the long and short of it. That's what makes the most sense. Base PSO2 wasn't a super game. NGS is a super game. The only reason the two of them are connected is because NGS would have not, base PSO2 basically would have died. They would have lost large amounts of profit shares. They would have lost tons and tons of money. And NGS wouldn't have had a fighting chance to begin with. That's it. That's all there is to it. I don't think this really kind of accomplished what it was set out to do, unfortunately, because the argument still is a super game or not. I mean, I'm going to be perfectly real. This is the most liked comment, and this is completely incorrect. Like, that's flat out. The only thing right about this is it hasn't specifically been defined as a super game. This isn't, NGS has never been defined as the super game. They didn't define all of their super games. They defined the upcoming new games that were going to be worked on as super games. Yes, games that they wanted to bring back, previous IPs and titles. But by NGS, by their literal own definition, NGS is a super game. I actually think it's the one that's getting all the money behind this. That's all. So yeah, a lot of this might have been cut out in post, by the way. Hopefully you guys got the overall message, because we did go on quite a bit of a tangent. I'm sure Cry is going to just yeet all of it and not even worry about dealing with it. It is sad to see the way that people are like actually treating fellow creators, dude, because a lot of people, basically most of us, are busting our ass to try to give anyone any information whatsoever and bring you guys good tidings so you can enjoy the game. And a lot of times this is how it's met. So I'll be real with you guys. I'm gonna hit you guys with probably the realest responses, and you guys probably aren't gonna like me for this. But if you start to see people drop off of covering PSO2, I don't blame them, because why would they do it? Why would they deal with it when they're treated this way? I mean, I'm gonna be flat out honest with you guys. Most of us who still work on this stuff and still do our best to try to bring you guys as much information as possible, why would anyone ever put themselves out there when this is how they're treated? Legitimately, like this is the exact same thing that happened with a lot of the social media presence and things like that. Like, why even bother, man? Like, that's the reality of the situation. I'm still gonna make content. I'm still gonna be honest and real with you guys, as I always have been. You guys aren't always on my side, regardless of the situation is. And hey, I'm just gonna hit you with the honest to God hard facts, the truths. There's no arguing literal words that are on the screen. And some people need to take a really good, long, hard look at themselves and understand like what they're saying and what they're doing. Because, yeah, man, I don't know. For some people, it's not worth it. And I'll be real with you guys. A lot of people have already realized that, and they've moved on. But yeah, man, that's all I got to say. All in all, you guys had my take on the video itself. Like if you enjoyed, or dislike if you didn't, man. Honestly, either way, it helps me. So it's kind of crazy how you guys think it doesn't. And if you don't believe me, Google is your friend. Toss a comment. I'll say the one thing I've always said: be respectful of one another. I don't tolerate anything less. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care, my friends. Peace out.